3, 2, 1, roll the footage. Welcome back, everybody, to the Strategy Sprints podcast. I'm your host, Simon Severino. What if you could hang out with sprinters and ask them about their problems, their workflows, and their solutions? That's exactly what we do here at Strategy Sprints podcast every day. And today we explore with the inventor of the GrillGun how we can tap into the power of the Dream 100, how we can grow our business via influencers. Welcome, everybody. Bob Healey.
Hey, Simon, how are you doing?
So cool to have you here, Bob. We are excited. And what are you currently creating?
Well, right now, I'm just creating the business that's going to be able to sell all of these grill guns and sous vide guns that I've made. So it's really tough going from a concept to a prototype and then to actually production. You know, the entire notion of a bootstrap startup is not something that the average entrepreneur really has the stomach for, let alone the capacity to make it happen. So I'm in the business building phase of the company, not so much the product development, marketing it, selling it, and making sure that I have the team in place in all aspects that will make it successful.
Wow, so you have built a product that is actually needed, it's working really well, and now it's about scaling it. Beautiful. Tell us about the first part. How did you validate the concept? How did you test quickly? How did you do that?
Well, so everybody thinks that they have and whenever you're an inventor, you think you have the best idea and everybody's going to want it. And you really have to determine somehow whether or not that's actually true. And so there are lots of processes that I went through. First, I designed it, had a prototype, and I started showing it to people and getting their feedback, the direct feedback. And then I had to see if I could make it something that an investor would want to invest in. And honestly, if you're looking at my products, which is a grill gun or a variation of it called the sous vide gun, and what that is it's a torch that looks like a gun, but it shoots fire. So it's really the true definition of a firearm. If you look at something like that, and from an investment standpoint, they kind of step back. If this was a .com or a pharmaceutical or something that had a lot of historical precedent, then it'd be easy to get money for something like that. But with this, it wasn't that way at all. It's politically incorrect, for one, and it sells a huge amount of it on emotion. I mean, because you don't have to have something like this, but it's the best way to actually accomplish what it is you're trying to do. And so the conversation between me and an investor was something like this. I'd show him the product and he'd say, "Man, that's amazing. I'd like to have one." And then when I would ask him to invest in it, he would say, "Well, who would buy one?" I mean, think about that conversation here real quickly, because you've got somebody who's saying, "I'd buy one," and then they turn around and say, "Who would buy one?" So what he's really, a savvy investor really is looking for market validation, some reason to have some expectation that he's just not throwing good money away after bad, because after all, most ideas really aren't ever going to come to fruition. So they have to have some scale to be able to measure things against. So I had to validate it, and I had to get the financing for it. And the best ways to do that were unconventional. I ended up going the crowdfunding route, which truly validated the product, as well as said that there was a market for it. So it was easy to get money after that.
Before the crowdfunding, I'm super curious. The first prototype that you showed to one person, because many people right now here listening are thinking, "Hey, I need to get that API right, I need to get that feature right, and then I will show it." So how much was it working? How much was it mature, the prototype, the first time that you showed it? Was it just a draw of a gun, or was it really shooting fire already?
Well, Simon, my background is engineering as well as business management. And so I knew that somebody actually had to hold it in their hands. They had to be able to touch and feel it in order to get the concept, in order to be able to emotionally accept it. So although I've always hired engineers to design things for me in different capacities I've had, I was the engineer now. I mean, I said, okay, well, put your money where your mouth is, Bob, you know, design it. So I actually created the prototypes. I bought a 3D printer, and I bought 3D development software, and it's an amazing thing going from the concept, because I didn't know it was a grill gun when I started. I just knew it was a tool to light a fire that people would want to buy. Because my history, my personal history, is I like to barbecue. I like to grill outdoors. I like to sear my meat. I like to do that sort of stuff. And there was not a grill gun available for me to do that with at the time. So I had to come up with the idea and then actually had to make it. And that way people could actually experience it. So I had about 9 prototypes that I made. Went through the process of finding somebody who did rapid prototyping of the models that I had in order to have finished looking goods that I could work with and give to influencers and give to investors so that they could actually, with confidence, say that this is a real thing. And what we're really going to do here is sell a real product, because the notion of trying to get money before you have a product, I mean, before you have a production product, is really kind of hard to do. It's easy if you've got a production product and you know what it costs and everything's all ironed out to explain the story and what the costs are. But when it's all still just in your mind is how you're going to make it work, it's really pretty challenging. And so I had to make prototypes of it, and I had to actually let people use it. In fact, the influencer model of selling the idea to people in order to run a successful Kickstarter campaign was done with prototypes. And all of the videos, the early videos back in 19, the spring of 2019, they were prototypes that I'd made. And I understood the cost of it well enough to be able to say to not only people who would buy it, but to the influencers what it costs and what I would run a Kickstarter campaign on in order to be able to get the financing. I had to ultimately take the Kickstarter route, crowdfunding route, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, in order to be able to get the capital that it took to actually develop the product. Because as cool as it was, I couldn't get investment capital to see it my way.
So first part, rapid prototyping, quickly with the 3D printer, how quick, how cheap can I build something that is like the product? And then the second part was crowdfunding. Some people think crowdfunding is at the very beginning of the stage. And my experience is it's really the last part of the validation stage, of the product stage, because it needs already to be kind of validated if you want a lot of people to chip in. What was your experience?
So it was in February of 2019 that I said, if I'm going to get the capital that I have to make this, I have to go Kickstarter. So that was a word that I was new to. I was not in any way invested in crowdfunding. Never done it before. Never paid any attention to crowdfunding. So in March, April, and May of 2019, in 3 months, I learned about crowdfunding. I actually, this is something that a good takeaway for your listeners, and that is what you're kind of a lead on to what you're saying, Simon. Simon, sorry. Simon, is that where you go? Not, all right, sorry. Simon, the way that you have to run a successful crowdfunding campaign is you have to have a product concept that's mature enough to let people have some concept of if they're going to give you their money, because that's what crowdfunding is. They're not buying anything. They're going to give you their money so that you can develop your idea. And so it's got to be compelling. You got some 40 million people out there that are interested in crowdfunding. They just think things are cool. But that means that at any one time, there's 4,000 some crowdfunding projects that are available any single day. And so you've got to do something that's going to drive your project in front of the people. And so how do you do that? Well, you can read books on it. You can go through or you can do what I did, is you can study successful campaigns. I mean, study them intensively, where you understand every aspect of their presentation, how they approach the audience. You can call the people, if you can reach them, that ran the campaign and ask them the questions. But the best thing to do is to see why it is that they were successful, and to write that all down. Comb through the most successful campaigns and understand how they did what they did. And so that's
Let
what I
me
did.
share one example from last week, which is really to the point of what you're saying. I am in a mastermind with the founder of Atari. So this person invented video gaming. He gave Steve Jobs his first job in his company, very
Yeah.
young, a very young Steve Jobs. So you can imagine this guy has all the knowledge and all the best starting position to start a crowdfunding campaign. So what he did is, there was a game out there that he believed in. The concept was amazing. He sent to all our mastermind colleagues the link. Hey, here's my crowdfunding campaign. Will you go there? I go there. I love the game immediately, the concept. I immediately click yes. And while I'm clicking, it says the campaign is over. It didn't get enough funds. So even the best people, the best concept, it's highly likely that it doesn't work. So what was it that worked in your case?
So you're exactly right. That most of them don't work. In fact, 80% of all crowdfunding campaigns end without having made their goal. And so you have to have a goal that's makeable, and you have to understand how to make that goal that's makeable and what that goal has to be. And then you have to know, I mean, I'm a numbers guy, and so you have to know where all of the buyers are going to come from. And you just don't have enough aunts and uncles and grandmas, right? And best friends to go out and buy your product to make you successful. You have to understand the market. And so in the case of the GrillGun, what I did was I first said, all right, who are my buyers? How am I going to approach them? And so simultaneously, while I was trying to figure out Kickstarter, I started selling grill guns online. I mean, just started selling them just to see whether or not people would actually buy them. Now, I didn't take anybody's money. I just had it available for sale. I built a website, had it available for sale, and I was able to track how many people who would go and read about it and decide that they like it, and would actually then put their money where their mouth is by using their credit card, who would actually buy it. And it took me, I ran that campaign for about 2 weeks. And I was able to, with that, I was able to see the velocity of people. I could understand the percentage of people who said that they would buy one, I mean, follow my campaign and go there and then spend the money. So you could see who's coming in to the website, and you can see what the conversion rate is. And so you now understand how many people at what the price is going to be you have to have in order to be able to have the necessary conversion for a sale. And so mathematically, I found out that it would be 2%. 2% of the people who actually saw it were going to buy it. And I also found out that if I could promote it properly, that I could actually bump that up to a 4% conversion if that was if it's done well. So then it's just a math equation.
Did you test full price, 100% or 75% or even less?
Say that again.
Did you test with the full price, 100% or 75% or even less?
Oh, at the time, I put it out at a discounted price in order to be able to understand, because in Kickstarter, a person needs to feel like they're getting something that they can't get for retail. I mean, if you run a Kickstarter campaign and you're selling a game or a product or something like that, and then after you fund it, you can go buy it in retail for a cheaper price than what you were selling it for, or what you purchased on Kickstarter, you're not going to be happy. And Kickstarter or Indiegogo is really a platform that people share their thoughts about. It's a review sort of platform. And so I had to actually be trying to sell it at a price that I thought I could make work on Kickstarter in order to be able, the notion behind Kickstarter was to get the capital that I needed, because I could then build the infrastructure that would take to actually make the product, ship it to me, and then distribute it to everybody that is going out there. So I'm sort of taking a rabbit trail. It didn't mean to so much. You had the website that I was selling it on, my website that I started building and selling it on, was selling it at a price that I felt was a Kickstarter price. And that's what I was able to see. And so, because that's what I was really interested in, is if I sold it at this price on Kickstarter, would I be able to, how many people would have to actually see it in order to be able to be successful with it? So once I knew what that ratio was, then I knew how many people I actually had to have confirmed would actually buy it. And that was a huge number. I mean, we're talking thousands of people, and where was I going to find thousands of people? And so my product is, again, it's a GrillGun. It looks like a semi-automatic pistol with a long barrel on it, and it's a fully functional, high-power, 400,000 BTU torch. It makes lighting a grill a snap. And explaining that and telling that to people in the form of a Kickstarter campaign is what I was going to need to do. And so I picked gun shows, the Wanamaker Gun Show, Arcade Gun Show. I went to gun shows in the area that I live in, and just sold air again. I mean, people would say, "That's cool, I want to buy one." And so
I love it that you didn't go to grill shows, you went to gun shows. I think that's the smartest way and the right positioning.
So I would take their name. I mean, they would be kind of disappointed because they wanted to take it home with them, but I would take their name and their number and their email. And I said, when I launch this is going to be crowdfunding, and when I launch my Kickstarter campaign, I'm going to send you an email or a text message and have you go, I'll tell you where it is, when it is, and you just go get it. And so I had a lot of people, I mean, just hundreds of people sign up for doing that. But I could tell still, even with hundreds of people, some insignificant number of those people are actually going to follow through with what they say. So I had to derate the hundreds of people that I got by 10% and say, those are the real people who are going to buy it. So it was not enough. And I then said, well, I need to keep going. I can show influencers that it's valid and people would buy it at this price. Now that I've done the work with the gun shows, now I need to reach out to influencers, and influencers or pick the category. For me, it was a grilling category. And so I started reaching out to people who had YouTube video shows, that would, that I thought would enjoy it. And so I sent them one of my prototypes. I had 9 of them at the time. And, if you figured out how much I had invested in each one of them, it was several $1,000s of GrillGun by the time I got it made. But I sent it to them. They ran their video. They talked about how great the product was. And I could use the number of people they influence and derate it again by the same numbers that I had learned by running it on my website.
Mm-hmm.
So I could use the history of what I was doing in order to tell me how many people would actually buy it if they saw it on the influencer's website. And so then it was really just a function of saying, okay, how many people does this guy have influence over? Derate it by a factor of what that actually is, and get enough influencers in the bank, so to speak, that before you launch a Kickstarter campaign, you must know, I mean, put this in your head and never forget it. You must know where your sales are going to come from, and they have to come in the first 3 days. If you don't make a Kickstarter campaign is really might as well just run a 30-day campaign or a 40-day as I did, because they're generally just sounds of crickets in between the beginning and the ending. You just don't have people that want to pay attention to it. They jump in, they look real quick, and then they sit on the sidelines and they wait to see whether or not it's going to be successful before they get in. And so you got 3 days to make a buzz, and then you got about 3 days where the house is on fire and you're trying to figure out where they're all going to come from for the typical Kickstarter campaign. And so
let me rewind quickly. This is so important. Many people out there who are starting a crowdfunding don't think that you just do this and it will solve all problems for you. The first 3 days, you have to find your number, the 2%. Then you have to think about, can you get it to 3%, to 4%? How will you get it there? And what is it? And then the next step is you have to be prepared to have the sales lined up for the first 3 days. This is so important. And it's not just putting it up there, yes, people want it, and that's it, it will be sold. You have to prepare the sales. How did you prepare the sales?
So I tried to make sure that I launched my Kickstart campaign at the most optimal time of the year. So for a grill product like this, it's going to be the beginning of the summertime when everybody's getting their boat out of the garage and they're taking the cover off their charcoal grill, that sort of thing. So Memorial Day was my had to make target in order to be able to run a successful Kickstart campaign for my particular product. And so I lined up as many influences that I needed. I got them to shoot videos for me that would release on Memorial Day or in that same 2 or 3 day period, either just before it or just after it, that I could point to in the Kickstarter campaign. I built the Kickstarter website to the specifications that I determined needed to be by studying successful Kickstarter campaigns, and I built the program and the sale or the presentation of the gifts, if you will. The gifts would be future grill guns if I was successful and got it crowdfunded, and had all that ready to go on Memorial Day of 2019. And I knew before I went into it that it would be successful, because this is another important part, and that is, if you were to go out on Kickstarter and say, this is what you really need, I mean, the whole thing, I need this much, and ask for it, it'd be impossible to get. I knew I would have to have $400,000 in order to be able to bring this product into bring it to the market. But if I said $400,000 on the Kickstart campaign, it would never make. I mean, people would stand back and say, there's no way he's not gonna make $400,000 with this. And so I had to determine what was my minimum that it would take to make, that I could afford to give the money back for, because I'm a person with integrity and I wouldn't just take people's money and not give them something. And so I said I need to have my threshold was $65,000. So it's important not to overestimate how much it takes or underestimate it. People, that's the number one flaw people make, is they don't understand what it's going to take to actually be successful with the product in the product launch. And so they ask for too little, and they're always going back to the till looking for more money. And that never works. It just makes everybody unhappy. So I launched, I knew that in the first 3 days, I was going to be able to get $65,000 worth of sales, that it would make that for sure. Then I knew that the steam engine, or the steamroller effect of success, it makes in 3 days. You're successful in 3 days. You're going to make it. Now it's all gravy. Everybody thinks, okay, now I can get on and I can get one because he's going to bring it to market. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there in the wings saying it's got to hit 400,000, but I'm not sharing that with people because it would run them off. And I can afford to give back. Kickstarter takes 3% or something like that. So if I had to give everybody's money back, I'd have to give it back less 3% that I would give away to Kickstarter. So it would cost me a sizable amount of money in order to make that happen. But it's a whole lot better to give back not enough money than to take what you know won't work and go to market with it. Is that too complex? I mean, I don't want to.
I love it. And we geek out on these things. This is exactly what we love. Really, the technicalities of product launch, the risk, what you have to check. And this is beautiful. People listening to this who have a crowdfunding campaign coming up soon, they have now a perfect checklist. They should re-listen to this and really write it down. It's a perfect checklist.
Right. So know where your sales are going to come from. And so I could tell that. I knew I could see all the influencers. I could see the list of people that signed up for it. I was able to structure a launch where I knew in 3 days it was going to make. And it was fascinating to watch, because if you follow these procedures, you can with confidence know that it's going to make. And so in 3 days' time, I watched it roar past $65,000, and I knew it's going to be made. And if you look at the trend of the GrillGun GrillBlazer Kickstarter campaign, it was on a steady incline, no crickets in the middle. Every single day, it continued to increase in the number of sales. It just gained momentum, and it continued to gain momentum through the Indiegogo campaign. So the Kickstarter campaign ended the first week of July, 1st of July, I think it was. And then I launched an Indiegogo campaign, which was something that you could take any of the money that you made on Indiegogo, you could get, because you'd already made the campaign. It was a way to just kind of have a retail presence for a crowdfunding product. And so by the time I actually had the product in hand, made and in hand, and was able to give it to every one of the Indiegogo and Kickstarter people who bought one, I had sold $560,000 worth of them. I well past my $400,000 mark. That all happened by the 400,000 mark. I eclipsed before the campaign was over. The Kickstarter campaign was over, and the next 165 was just sort of gravy on top of it. But you can actually count on that if you go through and you actually do the homework to understand how to make a really successful Kickstarter campaign. And it's not just, the formula is not something that you can use my formula for yours, because your product is different. Whoever is listening to this, you have to understand successful campaigns in this kind of product category. Study what Kickstarter does in presenting products on the first page. Remember, there's some 4,000 products available every single day for anybody who's on Kickstarter, who's a Kickstarter junkie. And so if I was Kickstarter junkie and I paid attention to it all day long, I couldn't see 4,000 products. I mean, it's going to take being on the top of on the first page above the fold to be successful in a Kickstarter campaign. And so you have to drive specifically everything that it takes to make that happen, and then it'll be successful.
I love it. And I'm curious to hear who you nominate for a strategy award after one word from our sponsors.
Hey, if you like the tools, go grab them for free at strategysprints.com/tools.
Everybody's zigging, this person is zagging, but from your perspective, they're doing the right thing. Who do you pick?
There's another podcaster out there, a friend of mine and actually business associate. His name is Clay Clark. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's the founder of the Thrive Time Show. It's one word, thrivetimeshow.com. And he he zigs all of the time. Everybody is zagging, and he's saying, "No, follow me over here." So you can see his podcast. In fact, it'd be cool, Simon, if you were to be on his show or interview him, because he's just an amazing character. Right now, his efforts are being spent on waking up America after this whole COVID malaise. So he's having conventions across the country and getting people to pay attention to what does it take to actually be alive in the world today.
Beautiful. And what are the 3 books that inspire you?
Go back to 2021. Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great. Most people have read it by now that are interested in a successful company. And I did. And I read it in 2004, right in the beginning of my executive management part of my business career. And the principles taught there in that book are something that are sort of guiding principles. It's the notion behind the book is it's harder for a good company to become a great company than it is for a mediocre company to become a great company. And it makes sense if you noodle on that for just a little bit, because what happens is when you're good, you're not willing to make the radical shifts that it takes to become great, because you think you can just kind of edge your way up there a little bit. Good employees are not great employees. They're employees that do a good job. And if you're going to be happy with a good company, well, then great. Keep your good employees, keep your good processes, keep your good products. If you want to be a great company, you have to constantly be looking at what does it take in every category of your business. And Jim actually wrote a book with real compelling evidence about that I didn't have any experience in that, but I paid attention to it, and it helped form my career. 2 other books. So this is where the conversation could actually take a different tack, because what I read from what we've been talking about, business success, I personally went through sort of a crisis, if you will, last year in 2020. While I was launching my business, just as I had products that I was sending out to Kickstarter campaign people and was launching a website and building it, I found out, because I went to a routine checkup, that I had metastatic stage 4 terminal incurable prostate cancer that had metastasized to all over my body. I mean, it was the bones, the lymph nodes, the blood. The prostate was eaten up. I was being eaten alive, and the doctors were giving me really it's incurable, and they know that, and they just talk really frankly about it, how you're going to die, you need to get your affairs in order and all that stuff. And so I wasn't willing to accept that, because nobody's willing to accept that. And what I needed to do was I needed to really embark on a new research project. So while I'm trying to build my business and come up with a way to successfully sell my product, I also had to become a researcher on cancer. What was the nature of it? And that's where those 2 books came in. I wrote the titles down on a note that I can't find right now just before I interview, but it was Keto for Cancer and Cancer, a Metabolic Approach to Cancer. And I can't think of the authors' names on either of both of them, but they were formative in my understanding cancer, what it was, and what I'd be dealing with, and how was I going to battle this, because the standard of care, what doctors tell you, is they have nothing to do in my stage. Nothing is successful. In 2 years, only 7 people out of 100 are still alive, and in 5 years, everybody's dead. And so I'm facing all right, I had a great Kickstarter launch. I'm embarking on this great company. I've got investors. Now I find out that I'm going to be dead in a year and a half or something like that, which is now a year and a month, or a year and 2 months into that. So I'm not dead yet.
You look
And,
very healthy. How
well,
did you do? Metabolic and keto program?
well, those are part of it, but I landed on the research of a doctor, not a doctor, but Professor Thomas Seyfried. That's Seyfried.
Mhm.
And Dr. Seyfried's a fellow at Boston College and a scientist, a research scientist. And if you were to just Google Thomas Seyfried, you would learn just a ton of information about cancer and what cancer is and why the world of oncology has it wrong. And so
What is it for the lay people listening? Is it a metabolic thing?
cancer is a metabolic disease. It's not a genetic disease. And I'm gonna get hate mail from this, but it's really because I'm flying in the face of what oncology and people live and know. I mean, if you're an oncologist, you go to college and you learn this and you spend 40 years in practice. You're not wrong. You're a smart doctor. You're practicing everything that you're preaching and you're doing it right. But you didn't learn what's right. And I know, who am I to say that sort of thing? All I can say is I'm a cancer survivor right now. I mean, I didn't know Thomas Seyfried from you. From anybody else down the way. It's why would I believe what he had to say? And so that started me down this path. First reaching out to him, finding out who I should reach out to and touch. So I approached my cancer care in the same way I approached building a business. Exactly the same. It's, if I'm going to win this, I have to understand the process and the problem.
The data, understand the situation.
Right. And then I started doing tests and I got data and I tested the data. And, in the end, the end is not written yet. I don't really know. But this is, at the time of this recording, it's June. And in January of 2021, this January 2021, I had scans and no evidence of cancer. So I went from incurable cancer to no cancer in less than a year. I mean, I find out that I'm going to die and there's no hope for me to, now I'll probably die of old age, but I really don't know. I don't really have any idea whether or not it's just kind of lurking in the backgrounds. There's no evidence of it. The scans are complete. The indicator, the PSA indicator is, there's no trace of any cancer, any of the antigen associated with it. So all the work that I did, plus I'm a deeply religious individual, and I believe in prayer and the power of prayer and in God. And I had hundreds and hundreds of people in churches all across the country praying for me. So I really have no idea, honestly, if it was all the hard work that I did or all the hard prayer that I did. But it was a combination of both, and not just me. And so, in the words of St. Augustine, pray like it all depends on God and work like it all depends on you. That's what I did. And so the two books I was talking about gave credibility to the notion of cancer as a metabolic disease, not a genetic disease. And so when the first question that you're asked is, who else in your family do you have cancer? Has cancer? Who died of what? Breast cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer. It doesn't matter. None of that's relevant. And I say none of that's relevant, and there'll be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people say that I don't know what I'm talking about. I get that. I don't believe that they're right, because the evidence points, the research that Thomas Seyfried did points directly at the fact that all cancer is curable, and but it's, boy, Simon, we could talk about this for hours, honestly, because there's just this topic alone, the topic of Kickstarter, the topic of building a business, hiring people, Oh, and then throw into the mix, having cancer and then not having cancer all at the same time. It's just been the last 18 months has just been a huge whirlwind. And I took the same approach towards that as I, to the cancer solving as I did to building a business. And so far, it appears to be that I'm successful.
Gail Orenstein is asking, did you become religious when you became ill, or were you religious pre-cancer?
I've been religious my entire life, but I converted to the Catholic faith back in 2005 at the same time that now Saint Pope John Paul II died. So I've been Catholic for 17 years, 16 years or something like that, and intensely religious and intensely faith-loving. So I knew that the cancer that I have or had was God's will for me. And again, now I'm going to get hate mail on this topic as well, because it's not something that people are willing to do. I believe firmly that God is entirely in control of what's going on. I don't mean driving it like a boat, but unless he wills it, it doesn't happen. So he had to have willed that I have cancer. And I have no idea if the reason that I have cancer is to be able to had cancer. It was to be able to not have cancer, to talk on this show and to affect the person who just sent an email in. I really don't know. And so I take every single step. It's really quite miraculous that I'm even here talking to you, because if we had scheduled this a year ago,
Your doctor would have said it's not going to happen.
Right. And so I can tell an entirely different story now that I had no notion about it. So I could talk about business. I could talk about Kickstarter, because I learned about Kickstarter. The Kickstarter campaign, I didn't mention this, was 0.04 in the top 0.04 percentile of successful Kickstart campaigns. In other words, 10%, only 20% of Kickstarter campaigns ever even make, and only 1% of them break $100,000. And so at 0.4% of them, then I'm in rarefied air. And it's not anything that nothing magic about Bob. Bob Healey's not a master. He just follows the numbers and does what the data says. And I did the same thing when it comes to cancer treatment. It's follow the numbers. And so as far as the religion is concerned, from a purely practical standpoint, why wouldn't you be? If the alternative is when you die, you're just dead, right? That's just it. That's the end of it. There's no notion of an afterlife. Well, happy you. That's a great outlook. Absolutely, 100% of us will die. There's not a question. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And the timing for my dying was sooner than I had anticipated, but not now.
I am so pumped about this, and I could go on for 2 hours more. And actually, I would like to propose that we have another conversation very soon, and about your whole research process, about what is cancer, how did you search for the data, what did you find, what surprised you, and what might be a different angle that obviously you have found, and how it might inspire also the search process of other people. So if you want, let's do that
Sure.
very soon. I would love to. And I'm so inspired by this. Absolutely. Bob, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your journey, prototyping, crowdfunding, researching your own health and life situation. Beautiful. This has been an episode about how to own your own data, your own destiny, and be a scientific entrepreneur on every level. And one last question: where can people hang out with you, read more about your things?
So my website's GrillBlazer.com. Where you're going to find me right now is working diligently to build this company, to hire the right quality people. If you were to just use the search engine Google and Google the word GrillBlazer or GrillGun, you'll find reviews about the product that I have. My approach towards business is to give the customer the best satisfaction possible. So if you read the Google reviews, there's, I think at last look I saw 336. They all talk about how it's a fabulous product and it's a fabulous company in the terms of customer support. So you can find me through GrillBlazer. You can email me if you wanted to, if you've got cancer. I've got so many people asking me because of this story, what do they do? I'm not a doctor. I don't tell them what to do. I tell them what I did. And it becomes a personal journey, and I'm happy to share that, because I couldn't, so many people are calling me and saying, what do I do? I just wrote it all down so that I can, that would be the clip notes for our conversation, Simon, if you wanted to have that in the future interview.
Yes, I want to have it. And usually at this time, I ask who should be my next guest. But this question is answered. You are my next guest, and Mark is my next guest. So it's clear, and we see each other soon. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your journey with us, and see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Simon. Bye-bye.
Avoid trying to do thousands of things that doesn't work. We have 274 templates for your business success. Reach your ambitious goals with one-on-one sprint coach. We double your revenue